Marty, thank you very much. Uh, Marty and I did meet a bunch of years ago in the early days. Marty today continues to sit as a member of the executive committee of WorkingNation. It's like it's in my eyes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Should be better. So this is actually okay. Okay. That that work? Okay. Anyway, so as I said, Marty and I have worked closely together. He's been on the executive committee of WorkingNation for a good number of years, and we've come a long way. And I really do believe we are focused on really one of the most critical issues facing our nation. Let me mention right up front, we are only focused on the United States, even though the issues are issues that impact elsewhere in the world, very, very dramatically. But when I was invited to speak at the Vatican it was January of 18, I was asked by an investment guy who's also connected very high up at the Vatican. He asked me if I would speak in April at the Vatican for a conference. And I said, Jeff, I could only save one country at a time. However, if you get me a one-on-one with the Pope, I'll do it. He didn't get me a one-on-one with the Pope, so I haven't spoken at the Vatican yet. Anyway, thank you very much, and thanks. Actually, it's been a fascinating afternoon. Quite an interesting mix of ideas. I am going to be talking about something a little bit different, but I think it actually dramatically impacts so much of everything else you guys are talking about, because it really is critical to the underlying economy of our nation and and beyond the economy, just a lot of the other circumstances. Fast forward, my background is a significant investment background. As Alan mentioned, he and I hung out together back a good number of years ago. But I started out actually very appropriately. In the last 2 days, I was at the Milken Global Conference here in LA. I don't know if anyone else was there, but I was there primarily because in 1977, I joined Drexel Burnham as one of the very early investment bankers there. And I was there right up till the end in February of 90, St. Valentine's Day massacre. I ended up as co-head of investment banking there. I mention that because it's an important piece of what really fueled the development of WorkingNation. Did a lot of media investment banking during those years, including in 1985. I met a really interesting guy. His last name was Turner, first name Ted, and I became Ted's investment banker and worked on saving CNN from bankruptcy and buying all kinds of assets with Ted, including MGM, et cetera. And I mentioned that because going back to WorkingNation, as Marty, mentioned, WorkingNation is a not-for-profit media enterprise. A media enterprise sounds a little strange. Like, who would create a not-for-profit media enterprise? But as I said, if you were Ted Turner's investment banker in the 80s, and if you ran Rupert Murdoch's largest affiliate group of stations in the 90s for about 2.5 years, in the 90s, I learned a lot about how you can use media to educate and influence people in this country. And anyway, post Drexel, I was one of the founders of Apollo Advisors, the private equity firm. There, we created the largest Fox affiliate group of stations in the US, and I did go in and run it. I entered the tech world in September of 98, totally by accident. I didn't even own a computer. But I ended up as one of the original investors and vice chairman of a company, Akamai Technologies. And that opened my eyes. So venture capital has been a key area of investment of mine ever since that. And the ed tech world has been a key part, courtesy of Mike Milken. He actually in '02 asked me to invest in that, an original ed tech investment back then. But anyway, a lot of those experiences got me thinking about how the world was changing. And in 10 years ago, I was at a Deutsche Bank dinner in New York. It was the night before the US government might default on its debt. And Larry Summers, former Secretary of the Treasury, was guest speaker. And I was there, and I was the only one I knew was the guy from Deutsche Bank who invited me. And I was sitting there, and I think I probably drank too much wine because when Summers opened it, and he spoke all about default, he spoke about China quite a bit and all. But when he opened it to questions, I was sitting right up near the podium. I raised my hand, they gave me a mic, and I said, Dr. Summers, uh, can you explain to the audience how structural unemployment in this country would become a major factor as a result of four things coming together like never before in history: globalization, technology, longevity, units of labor stay in the workforce long, and broken education. Those four coming together like never before in history. And as a result, the slope of the curve of the change in jobs and skills, when measured against time, would be changing dramatically over the next 5 and 10 and 15, 20, 25 years. Dr. Summers and I had an interesting back and forth, but the way this whole thing got started was later that night. 7 different major fund managers who were there at, it was probably about 150 guests or so, and all major fund managers and all top executives. 7 different fund managers, none of them knew me, but 7 different ones chased me down that night over the course of the evening and said, I can't believe I've never thought about this. And I said, wow, if the giant fund managers in New York aren't thinking about this, then the average American isn't. Whoa. And I began really digging in because of my background educationally, as well as investment world and all. I really had the opportunity to dig in from a research standpoint. And over the next couple of years, I really dug in and I concluded that my instincts from drinking too much wine were correct. And I actually discovered there was stuff going on out there, but it had little to no visibility. I met the woman, I forget the name of the organization, but a woman who started a not-for-profit to train Black women in coding. Interesting idea, but she touched about 100 people a year. And I said, I know how to tell the story about that and, put it out there and get people. So anyway, as I discovered there was stuff going on out there, I ultimately decided I'm going to create this not-for-profit media enterprise to focus on these workforce issues, but with the central mission being identifying where are the jobs of today and of tomorrow. And when I say tomorrow, I don't mean 20 years from now. I'm talking about 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, and 7 years from now. And then what are the solutions? What are companies doing out there? What are not-for-profits? What are academic entities? What's local government doing? And basically, our mission is to identify the stories that should be told. And official launch was September of 16. First content that we put up was on CNN's platform. It was actually, we named it the piece Slope of the Curve. Then content went up on Time Inc.'s platform and then Fortune Magazine's platform. And today, we've got Scripps Media as a partner, and I think Univision's now going to partner with us. And obviously, all the digital opportunities out there. Plus, we've got a lot of other organizations, which I'll talk about. And we've come a long way. And the way I like to describe, we went from $1 of value to $5 of value. Basically, a term that I always use, the multiplier effect. For those who understand media and understand advertising, put in $1 and your goal is to get $5 of value. Now, our goal is to go from $5 of value to $25 of value, because I really believe these employment issues that we face, And I know you all hear the Bureau of Labor Statistics, lowest unemployment rate in, 40 years and all kinds of. First of all, you can't believe the statistics because a lot of it is not correct if you really do. For example, workforce participation rate is probably near a 30-year low. People who haven't looked for a job in a year aren't counted as part of the workforce. And as you can imagine, COVID, for example, set people, out of work and getting back in. Also, you pump in $5 trillion, keeps people out of work. Anyway, lots of reasons for people not going back to work. One of the big reasons is the skills gap. And I'll get to AI in a moment. Anyway,
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
Do you focus mostly on head of household jobs? I mean, that's the way when I ran the group at Chase, we called it head of household jobs.
No. We are very much focused on the heart of America. So I guess I'm not sure your definition of head of household.
Well, one person can support a family with the job.
Well, we do not do much, if anything, with regard to Princeton grads or Harvard grads or University of Pennsylvania grads. That's where I went to school. And it has nothing to do with what's going on right now on those campuses. It has to do with we are focused on the heart of America. The middle class and the bottom 20%, very much focused on the bottom 20 not becoming the bottom 30, the bottom 40, the bottom 50%. And as a result of, as I said, globalization, technology, longevity, and broken education, those squeezes on the middle class are coming fast and furiously. So we're very focused on, skills training. Community college education is a very important thing. And there's all kinds of certificate programs. Google has an incredible certificate program now that we've actually done. Google's become a great partner of ours at WorkingNation. But let me go back and just emphasize why I'm so focused on workforce. And that is, yes, it's about dollars and cents. We've got to be able to feed and educate the family. But there's a whole nother piece to, I believe, to the importance of employment. And that is the link between employment and purpose in life. Mental engagement, mental stability. I don't know, who's read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning? If you haven't read it, you'll give me a card and you're going to get a copy of the book because I've become the biggest purchaser of the book. It's on the Library of Congress's probably 20 most influential books ever published in the world. It's in like 50 languages and all. But what happened with me, latter part of 15, someone said something at a conference and got me thinking about just my own career and putting aside dollars and cents. Just the importance of what I just felt. It drove me. The positive, getting out of bed in the morning and just working like crazy. And I really wasn't doing it that much for dollars and cents. It was that purpose piece of it. And then first quarter of 16, Giselle Fernandez, a renowned journalist who I've known and sits on our executive committee also at WorkingNation, Giselle came to me in the first quarter of 16 with the movie rights to this book, Viktor Frankl's book. And she came to me to make a documentary. Now, it's because, and I take no credit for it, but I was executive producer of a documentary that won the Academy Award for Best Documentary. If you haven't seen 20 Feet from Stardom, it's about the great backup singers of rock and roll. You got to see 20 Feet. But anyway, that's why Giselle came to me to make the movie. I told her, Giselle, I'm working on this WorkingNation thing. I can't make a documentary. But it did. I was aware of the book, but had never read it. I did read it that weekend, and boom, it became the number 1, 2, or 3 most influential books I've ever read in my life. And Frankl was a pre-World War II psychologist in Vienna, Austria. Ended up in 3 concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He survived, and he came out with theories about who survived and who didn't survive. And the title of the book, Man's Search for Meaning, it gives you the punchline on his theory coming out. And that really cemented in my mind this link between employment and purpose in life. And I don't care, it's all of you here in this room, but also whoever might, serve you dinner tonight, or, clean your clothes, or, whatever it might be. There's a purpose in life piece to that. I was being confronted all the time by the whole idea of UBI being the solution. Art, the solution to what you're talking about is UBI. And my comment always was, one, I don't know how you pay for it. But two, where's the purpose in life piece to that? So anyway, that's a big theme of ours at WorkingNation, is that purpose in life piece of it. Anyway, so as I said, we're this not-for-profit media enterprise. We've got 4 key media strategies: video storytelling, journalism, town hall events that we film for hopefully future broadcast, and then podcast strategy. And my team, this is an unusual group of people that I'm used to speaking with, because when I get on the Zoom with my team, it's me and about 7 women. Literally, the of the 15 full-time executives at WorkingNation, I think 12 are women. So thank you, women, for what you're doing.
They're outstanding women, by the way.
Yes, and I'll take some credit for this. They've been with me since the beginning. Joan Lynch, who heads up all content development for us, she's been with me 9 years. Melissa Panza heads up all video production and all 8 years. Ramona Schindelheim, our editor-in-chief, 7 years. Jane Oates, chief senior advisor, 7 years. Lonya Guha, head of communications, 7 years. So I'm obviously doing something right, although maybe something wrong. Maybe I'm just overpaying, and that's the problem. But anyway, incredible team of people, and none of them were focused on employment before they met me. And so it's really grown. It's quite different. Anyway, as I mentioned, video storytelling is, clearly a very significant piece of what we've done, and we're recognized for what we do there, as well as the journalism. But I want to emphasize our town hall events, and we do them in different cities on different workforce-related subjects. And I want to highlight that this past Sunday, I was sent an email telling me, Art, we did a town hall event in Atlanta all about disabilities and employment, people with disabilities and the employability of them. And I got an email saying, and WABE, we turned it into a TV show, WABE, the PBS station in Atlanta, broadcast it. And Sunday, I found out we got nominated for a Southeastern Emmy Award. So, we'll find out in June whether we win an Emmy. Someone said to me, Art, you're on your way to an EGOT. I didn't even know what an EGOT was when they sent me the email. But between an Academy Award, and if we win an Emmy, and then all I need is a Grammy and a Tony, and I got an EGOT. I had no idea what that was on Sunday when they sent me that email.
With the Grammy.
You helped me with the Grammy?
I have a 3-time nominated artist that just got back from India with a UN kind of anointed musician, and with Hubert Laws, they were just there.
Okay.
And he can write something for you.
Okay. But you really don't want me to sing it. Anyway, key theme subject areas that we focus on. And we've got a pretty broad mix of them. As I mentioned a moment ago, disabilities and employment has been an important theme. We launched that in October of 22, and we've done, quite a bit in that area. Veterans was mentioned earlier this afternoon. Veterans and employment is a very important themes. I think it's going on maybe either 5 or 6 years, dedicating the month of November to veterans, employment related issues and opportunities.
Talking about employment, I have a client that developed an app that finds jobs for nurses and healthcare workers. And they're going to really roll up the industry. They do it much more efficiently than job placement counselors.
Well, I would love to learn more about that, because healthcare employment, we've done a lot, but that's going to be a big theme of ours next year. This year we've got a lot going on, which I'll talk about. But healthcare and employment is, I really want to push aggressively forward. So I'd love to learn more about it. Green jobs has been a big theme of ours for a long time. We hired researchers and we started doing research on a state-by-state basis of what green jobs are. And I'm talking much broader, not just windmill operators and all, very broad definition of green jobs. We've got the Aries Foundation, which has become a big funder of ours at WorkingNation. They will be funding a big event that we're doing in Puerto Rico on green jobs. That ties in with a big theme of ours this year on Hispanic workforce related issues and opportunities. You turn on the TV. When you used to be able to turn on the TV and see something other than, one or two key subjects that we're tortured with these days. We used to turn on the TV, and it was very interesting. You'd hear a lot about blacks. You'd hear a lot about women. You'd hear nothing about Hispanics. And I was the guy in 1992, not personally, but when I was at Apollo, who bought up the majority of the bankrupt debt of Telemundo. I didn't have to be that smart. I lived in Los Angeles. And, so Hispanic workforce, the Hispanic workforce growth in this country is so critical to the economy and to the consumer economy and all. And so a big theme, and we've done stuff, but this year, a big theme. And so we've actually picked 5 locations around the United States. We'll be doing big town hall events on, Hispanic workforce issues and opportunities in those areas. We're clearly going to do LA, because this way I don't have to get on an airplane, because I do fly every week doing this. But so LA, clearly got to do something in Texas, probably Houston. Puerto Rico, as I mentioned, the Aries Foundation is funding that. We're definitely going to be doing New York, and good chance I think Chicago will be. We were definitely doing Miami, but then when Puerto Rico came up, but we still may. We haven't made those final decisions. The only definite decisions, LA, because I don't have to fly, and Puerto Rico, because Aries funded it. Anyway, big theme of our older workers, big theme. You used to come out of a job and 30 years later, you used to come out of education, whatever it was, get a job, 30 years later, you retire. Well, that's not happening anymore. Lifelong learning, big theme of ours at WorkingNation. And older workers. So actually, courtesy of another major foundation, we will be doing a town hall event in Denver on older workers. And Scripps Media, who I mentioned earlier, is now going to become a broadcaster of things that we're doing. And so I think they've agreed to broadcast that event in Denver. Another area that we've done a fair amount, we're going to do a lot more, employment and the incarcerated. We have and the stats are insane. The number of people, the tens and tens of millions of people in this country who have a criminal record. And, there's still a life ahead. And guess what? If they could be employed, they may not go. The first story we told on this subject was at San Quentin Prison. A program was put in place to train inmates who were going to be released in entrepreneurship and in coding. In the 5 years that program existed when we did the film on it, no one who had gone through that program had been readmitted to prison. And so anyway, we've got a big event coming up actually in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on the incarcerated. Yeah.
Do you focus on expungement of, because not every felony is expungible, but quite a few are, you reduce them to a misdemeanor, and a lot of the misdemeanors are expungible. Now, they still can be viewed by government or for security clearances, but it really helps people get jobs, and it's not that expensive. They can get misdemeanors expunged for
totally agree. But we're not an institution that actually does something other than the storytelling that goes with it. So yes, would that be part of our storytelling?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to guide.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's everyone out there, the infrastructure is there, but they have to call.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, we're always, and basically in my ask to the people who are sitting here as well as who are, hooked in, first ask is ideas. We are, we spend our waking hours, and a lot of waking hours, searching for ideas.
The media is doing a lot of storytelling right now about Donald Trump going to jail, becoming president.
There you go.
Yes. And so, but we will tell the story about him he's looking for a job. By the way, let me mention, we are apolitical, truly apolitical. We do not run around Washington, D.C. at all. We will engage with state and local government because in the end, they are about solutions. Yes, federal tax policy and budget policy can have impact on all of this, but we're focused on the solution. So we're very localized in what we do. We cover, by the way, full geographies of this country. We literally have done stuff, all over the U.S. and we'll continue expanding it out.
You guys cover a lot of big ideas, right? Do you really focus on this ideas by scale? I mean, like the Hispanic population, AI, those are massive mega trends, right? I mean, so.
Well, yes.
Do you address them, or do you look to tell smaller stories inside?
No, but we tell the smaller stories. So I could say Hispanic employment, but we're going to then be telling specific stories in Chicago about specific, what specific entity might be doing with regard to a specific job. So it's not just, we really are not, we are very local in what we do. And so I'm giving you big, broad subject areas, but the stuff that we actually produce or write about or stuff like that is really about localized things under those subject areas. Internships, apprenticeships, and my favorite, someday we'll get there, national service. How do we bring young people into, or young and younger people into the workforce in a more efficient way? 16 years old, my father got me a job on Wall Street as a runner. I was 16 years old. I was delivering stocks and bonds back then. That was 16. I would have been 1969. Back then, you had to deliver stocks and bonds. There was no digital. And now I was the youngest runner at Spingarn Heine & Company by probably about 50 years. But anyway, I came back and I went to public school. I didn't go to private school. I grew up on Long Island. I went back to high school, and my guidance counselor, which by the way was it's a big missing ingredient that we have today, the lack of guidance counselors in this country, and that's something we focus on. But my guidance counselor said, "Art, how was your summer?" I said, "It was fantastic. I want to go to work on Wall Street." He said, "Well, if you want to go to work on Wall Street, you got to go to the Wharton School." So a year and a half later, I applied to the Wharton School and I got in and I went to the Wharton. Is that right? Oh, wow. So, and boy, I never partied so hard as I did those years at the Wharton School. But from Wharton, I then went to grad school because to get an investment banking job, you need an MBA back then. And boom, then I became the 21st investment banker at Drexel Burnham.
Were you really a sophomore for 3 years?
You work in the New York office or the
Started in New York, worked in 77. I joined Drexel, started in New York. About 80, I started flying. Mike Milken moved his operation out to LA in 78. I started flying out in 80. I started flying like most weeks. And then finally 82, I moved out here to LA. And my wife said to me, Art, you fly out every Sunday and you fly back every Friday. Why don't we move to LA? And my wife grew up in Brooklyn in New York. Anyway, she didn't know how to drive a car. So that was interesting coming to LA and you don't know, she didn't have a driver's license. But anyway, key partners. So my wife and I have been the primary funders of this pretty much since day one. But we have brought key partners on in all kinds of other ways. But also we've made some good inroads from a funding standpoint also with key partners out there. As I mentioned, the Aries Foundation has become a major funder of ours. The Lumina Foundation out of Indianapolis has been funding us for like 6 years. U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Clint Eastwood Foundation. You know, when I sat down with Clint and his business manager, this was a guy I didn't have to explain the power of storytelling to. So anyway, Clint, he has been primary funder of all the veterans stuff that we have done, and then began last year funding disabilities and employment stuff that we've been doing. Walton Family Foundation, major funder of the green jobs efforts that we've done. Honestly, yes.
Well, Clint Eastwood was a client of Greenberg and Glusker when I was a subtenant of theirs.
Oh, is that right?
Years ago.
Okay.
And
well, Clint's business manager, Howard Bernstein, actually called me this morning, now that I think about it. So I've known Howard quite well for many years, but Clint, I've met and I explained this all to him and he thought it was pretty interesting. So he's been a big supporter. JP Morgan Chase, as I mentioned, Google before, IBM, Comcast, other partners, but not from a funding standpoint, but we do all kinds of stuff with them. Federal Reserve banks, Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia and the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. We've done multiple things with each of them. Matter of fact, I went back to go hang out at the University of Pennsylvania about 3 weeks ago. And I just reached out to the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philly and boom, took a meeting with me on 24 hours notice. So, and he loves what we're doing. He began, as soon as I walked out of his office, he began making additional introductions
Is that part of their mission, the Federal Reserve? Employment?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Questions?
Fantastic presentation.
Well,
absolutely fantastic.
I've given it once before.
So where do you see?
I really believe, going back to where I said early on, I really believe this is such a critical part of our society, employment.
Well, it's underserved.
Well, it's underserved. It's also, I really believe as you look at so much of what's going on, you turn on the TV and you look at so much of what's going on in this country, I believe when you used to get up in the morning and go to work on an assembly line or whatever, you were part of a team, you produced, you brought home income to feed and educate the family, you were part of a community. A lot of important things are changing. I haven't mentioned AI, but obviously AI now is accelerating. Everything I was thinking about before AI is accelerating dramatically. And by the way, I am one of those people who actually has a very positive view of where AI can drive us in so many ways, but a lot of bumps along the road. And in the employment area, AI could take that unskilled worker and supercharge them into, but the skills gap, right now we've got a major skills gap. AI can minimize that skills gap, but we got bumps along the way. It's a lot of stuff's going to happen. Yeah.
Art, can you give us a sense of some of the specific programs and activities you envision doing, let's say, in the next 3 months, so we can get a little bit down in the weeds of some of the hard work that you and your team are doing? Give us a sense of some of the items. Can you do that?
Yeah, well, as I think I've mentioned a couple of things, the Denver thing that we will be doing on older workers is coming up. The Milwaukee thing on the incarcerated. Basically, Scripps Media now, in partnering with us, is going to take. I think they're now going to make 8 TV shows utilizing WorkingNation content. Now they're going to produce the shows, but they're going to take, a 5-minute video piece that we did on some workforce subject, and they're then going to create a show utilizing that. And the whole workforce area is, there's a lot of other stuff. No, there isn't that much stuff being discussed out there. There are 2 basic topics, but they are very interested in this workforce theme as one to get out into and they have 55 local stations. And so they want to speak to their local communities about these things. And so they're going to take 8 pieces of content, I think it's 8, that we've produced, and they will now then produce half-hour TV shows around our content and then broadcast it out to there. So that'll be happening. As I mentioned, the Hispanic stuff. So we will be doing 5 locations this year. I believe it's all going to happen this year. And there, as I mentioned earlier, Univision has now come along and agreed to want to broadcast the stuff with us. We will dedicate November to veterans, workforce-related issues and opportunities. The disabilities and employment is going to be a key theme that we'll do a lot of content over the course of the year. So most of, there'll be heavy concentration on some of these themes that I'm mentioning, but we actually do a lot of, like, the journalism side of things. We cover an incredible range of stuff on a weekly basis. We have a team that's literally, well, 1, commenting on other journalism that's out there, but 2, we write our own stuff and put it out there. And we really are now recognized. Oh, another thing I should mention, conferences. Really interesting mix of conferences around the US has us as a media partner, where we basically get set up at their conference and we get set up and film interviews of attendees. And we've developed a really interesting mix of people. And by the way, as I mentioned, Marty is on our executive committee, and we've got probably about 15, I think, members of our executive committee, incredibly notable mix of people. But then we also have an advisory board. I mentioned it because when I thought of conferences, that's where we see a lot of them. We probably have, 30 key experts in different subject areas who are on the WorkingNation advisory board. If you go to our website, which, go to WorkingNation and you'll find it. You'll see, if you look at the advisory board members, it's an incredible mix of people with, real expertise in these different subject areas. Yeah.
As a deal doer, which you've done for many years, what's been the hardest part of this project, this passion?
Well, it's changed over time. Early on, it was convincing ultimately my team members that employment issues are important issues. These were great by the way, all these women, great journalists, before they ever met me. But the employment, these set of issues was not something that they focused on. So it was first explaining to people the importance of this subject. And I will be very honest with you, I've learned a lot over these 10 years. I had some ideas, as I said, when I drank too much wine with Larry Summers, but I've learned a lot since then. I also think the issues have gotten a lot more complicated. Going back to the reference a moment ago, AI, that is changing things so fast. And how do you, from a story, from a research standpoint, how do you stay ahead of the curve when things are moving so quickly? And then I'll be very direct: funding. As I said, Dahlia, my wife is Dahlia. Dahlia and I have been the primary funders of this since the very beginning. We've pumped a lot of money into this, but it's really critical at this time and we'll continue funding this, but to really take it to these new levels, it really takes third-party funding.
Is the funding divvied up between the core working group and then the programs? So in other words, Aries Group will come in and fund a program, but they don't fund WorkingNation.
No, the way third-party funding works, if it is project-oriented, yes, it goes to a project, but 43% of that funding goes to pay the overhead of WorkingNation. Because when you really think about it, Joan Lynch and Melissa Panza, head producer, and Ramona Schindelheim, editor-in-chief, they're all they're factored, they're overhead. But in the end, they're producing all this content. So I don't think it's really inappropriate what we're doing, but we advise everyone right up front about that. And they're
very high level talent. I mean, they've been
incredible.
Around for a long time, working for the different news organizations, et cetera. So.
Yeah, Wall Street Journal and all kinds of. Ramona Schindelheim, she was executive producer of Power Lunch for CNBC for a bunch of years. So that's the type of people that we've attracted. So anyway, project funding, but also overhead funding also is a critical piece of the equation now. And as I said, to go from a woman in New York, very large family foundation. I was sitting with her at the Regency Hotel probably about 5 years ago. And I'm laying this all out to her. And she said, "Art, so what does WorkingNation do?" And I said, "Francine, if you give $1 to a not-for-profit, you hope to get $1 worth of value. If you give $1 to WorkingNation, our goal is to create $5 of value, the multiplier effect." Fast forward, summer of 22, I'm on I think it was a Delta Airlines flight from New York to LA, sitting there in my black mask, no glasses on, in business class or whatever it's called, and single seat. And the woman in front of me gets up, goes to the restroom, comes back, big black mask. She looks at me. She pulls down her mask. She says, "Art Bilger, Francine Lefrak, you're the one who taught me all about the multiplier effect." So anyway, so that $1 of overhead, the goal is to then create $5 of value, the multiplier effect.
Great job, Art. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for all that you do. And we are, this really does, whatever you spend your time in being productive and doing all kinds of things economically in society, I really believe this underlies, all the real estate. The last panel was on real estate. Guess what? All that real estate value ain't there if we don't have an
Somebody
underlying.
has to pay the rent.
There you go, right?
Exactly.
So every time I see you, I think about 2 new people to introduce you to, so hopefully we'll talk about that at dinner time, so.
Thank you very much.